Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking a fun and exciting video for you guys today, and one that I've been getting a lot of messages about. That is because YabaSanshiro, the other Sega Saturn emulator, just came out with a new innovation in how to display the graphics and get some more perspective correctness in the actual textures, especially in Sega Rally and Daytona USA. With compute shaders and basically going through the math on how the quads align, you're going to get a more stable road surface and less overall wibbling, for lack of a better term, in some Sega Saturn graphics. Now this is definitely still the first draft, and I will say for everything that it improves, there might be a regression here or there, and I'll get to those in the video. This has been something that people have long talked about with Sega Saturn emulation, just Sega Saturn graphics in general. Just like the PlayStation 1, you definitely had a lot of wobbling in the actual gameplay and the graphics, but it's one of those things on emulation, sometimes you would be completely missing textures or polygons in the foreground and background because of how everything was set up. Now with some new math routines and the ability to actually use that compute module, you're going to get a way more stable road, as you will see here. And that definitely is more impressive because it's probably Saturn's #1 weakness, just like PlayStation 1 where N64 never had that issue whatsoever. Although I will say right off the top, I do think this is introducing a little bit of latency in the controls because I felt like my car, no pun intended, was driving through mud, even if it is driving through mud. I have played and tested Sega Rally a ton, as I have Daytona USA on different MiSTer FPGA Sega Saturn cores, as well as on Medefend and Ymir, my #1 Sega Saturn emulator at this point in time, and this just had a feel to it that felt a little bit heavier and a little bit harder to control. Now again, this is the first draft at actually trying to fix some of the issues with Sega Saturn graphical rendering in emulation for YabaSanshiro, so it really isn't all that surprising that there's going to be some growing pains, but that is a turn that I've never really slid out on in years and years of playing this, and it is something that I kind of felt like my inputs were just lagging behind and I was trying to overcorrect for the game's latency. Now I don't have a measurement of it, it's just an overall feel because I love these games and I play the ever-loving hell out of them. Now going into the next stage here, this is running in real time. I'm not really cutting anything out, and maybe you noticed a few graphical corruptions in some of the 2D aspects. I will definitely say that you're going to see a couple issues that didn't used to be here in emulation when you're using this new compute module. So again, as this improves, it'll definitely be an impressive thing and something the Sega Saturn needs. I just don't want you guys to go into this new version of YabaSanshiro and expect perfection, because that is not where it is. And again, that's not a knock on the development team. This is highly impressive stuff, but a lot of times there are always going to be growing pains when you're actually trying to do things differently. And again, this is a completely new methodology to draw the graphics for the actual Sega Saturn. And I will leave a link in the description below to their blog post that goes into very deep technical detail about how all the math is computed to try to get this looking better. It is a very dense explanation, but it is a fun time, and even if you don't understand 100% of it, you will get a good grasp of what it is doing. But if you take a look at the road surface here, basically it's very close to being 100% perspective correct when it comes to actually drawing the road. And if you've ever played this game on real Sega Saturn hardware, you will know that the road absolutely looks like it is on a belt, kind of like a treadmill, and it loves to dip into the screen at the very end. And a lot of times in the foreground, you would just be seeing this overall warping, like a road was basically disappearing behind you, and in the very background, you would start seeing some actual quads just not being rendered correctly. They would have a separation to them. That's all stuff now that is 100% fundamentally improved, and if they can get some of the graphical glitches and freezing out of this build and kind of get the control latency to a point in time where it used to be, at least in my opinion, that would definitely benefit it. And again, I played this more than once, made sure that there was nothing wrong in my input chain, but I just had that feel of it kind of being like a game I'd never played before. Whether I tried a controller, whether I tried a wheel, keyboard, everything else, it just had a different feel to it. But even though that is the case, this is definitely very fun, future-looking stuff for Sega Saturn because it could always use some graphical improvements. Let's go into the first of two soundtrack samples for YabaSanshiro, because it's not an emulator that I often talk about on the channel because it is very Android focused, but this is the Windows build, and I'll be right back with a lot more footage.
One medium left. Check one. Wow. Easy left. Easy left, maybe. Medium left. Medium right. Check one. Easy left, maybe. up, maybe. One medium light. Caution, K-Web.
So yeah, it definitely sounds exactly like Sega Rally should sound like, and it definitely looks better on the road surface than Sega Rally ever did on YabaSanshiro, and that is something that is going to benefit the Saturn, and I'm sure you're going to see this thing improve over time. And as far as latency and the controls, again, it could be some really weird thing about my system, but I've loaded up a previous version of YabaSanshiro to compare against it. I didn't really have that same issue. It's one of those things that does seem to be part of the build, at least on Windows. Now moving over to Daytona USA, this is one again. You can see the road is way more stable, but as far as an actual gameplay experience is concerned, when you're in the game it feels good, but getting into the game you definitely have to push the right button at the right time or you're going to freeze the emulator. And I double checked this, if you're not on the new compute module trying to get all of this perspective correction, then that isn't going to be an issue. So again, I'm showing this to you in real time off the footage I captured. I would have jumped into the gameplay by now versus going through the attract screen, but I want you to see what happens when this actually loads into the next section. That way if you're playing around with this, you will be aware as well. And again, this is going to benefit basically every Sega Saturn game, but some examples are going to be way more fundamentally different than others. You'll see here, press start is basically going absolutely nuts, and if you don't press any button whatsoever, I wanted to see what happened here in the capture, you're going to end up on this screen, and it's basically going to freeze from here, so definitely hit that start button like it owes you money. But now that we're actually into the race, I would say this definitely has a lot better look to the road, but it's doing something slightly kind of staccato motion to the actual graphics and cars in front of us. So this is something, it definitely has a lot of promise to what it's doing, but again, it could use a couple more updates. And you'll see the controls, again, absolutely just got me wild there. It's like almost that the input persists for maybe a frame or two more than it should, and then it takes a frame or two for your actual correction to your steering to take effect. So I will get aligned here on my actual driving line, but it took me a moment, and because this game has a different feel than Sega Rally, it took me a couple extra moments to kind of get there. But if you take a look at the road, that definitely is improved. And if you see some of the vehicles in front of you, every once in a while they look like they're almost shifting to the left or to the right, like the frame of the vehicle is bending. I'm sure because this is basically just doing a bunch of complex math, that math could be adjusted and made to render better. Because again, this is just innovation, and so many times it takes 2, 3, 4 drafts of that innovation to really be honed in on what it can achieve. And because Sega Saturn Emulation is one of those things, we have more and more of it. It keeps getting better. I absolutely love to see stuff like this. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, as far as the new graphical styling here is concerned, are you a fan or not? Because it definitely looks like Daytona USA, but definitely also doesn't look like Daytona USA at the same time. Because I played the ever-loving hell out of this game on the Sega Saturn, and when you're in the graphical mode here, it definitely has a different vibe and a different feel, even if it is a vibe and feel that are technically improved and do have a better look to them in spots. But if you're going to make a Sega Saturn omelet, then you're going to have to break some Sega Saturn shaped eggs. You're also going to have to listen to that soundtrack sample because it's stuck in my head all day long now because I had to listen to it. So I'm going to make sure it's stuck in yours, but come back. I'll close out the video with some more information.
You can take it. You can take it. Great. Your time has been extended. Try to go easy on the car.
So yeah, now the song is going to be stuck in your head too, and there's a lot worse musical tracks out there for you to get stuck thinking about for like the next week or so. All jokes aside, Daytona USA on the Sega Saturn is an iconic game, and even if I would go over to the Model 2 version, if I wanted to sit down and just play it, I have so much nostalgia for this game, and it really is fun to see Sega Saturn getting love in 2026. And Ymir is definitely planning on some of these same features and graphical enhancements, so I feel like maybe in the next 12 to 18 months you're going to see Sega Saturn Emulation kind of get close to what DuckStation does for PlayStation 1 with overall enhancements. And that's definitely a world I want to live in, because if you didn't grow up with Saturn, you might not have the same nostalgia for it, but getting the graphics improved and making it run faster and look better will definitely get a lot more people to the Sega Saturn party, and it is a very fun party that more people need to attend. But short of that, the link to the blog post is in the description below. You can download it there for Windows, and of course it is kind of an Android focused emulator as well, so you're going to have that version if you so choose. But short of that, we're done. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. You tell me what you think of the vlog, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.